Good morning, members.
Thank you for visiting us anyway, Chief Governor. Okay, we're ready, Town Clerk?
Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Housing Management and Almshouses Subcommittee. My name is Judith Dignam, and I will be supporting the meeting, assisted by my colleague, Kalila Perry, who's recently joined the corporation and will be supporting the subcommittee in future. As you may be aware, the public element of the meeting is being recorded, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. While we endeavour to stream all of our meetings, technical difficulties may sometimes prevent live broadcast. In these instances, we aim to upload a recording after the meeting. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018, and for any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. Apologies, at item 1, we have received apologies from Deputy James
Thompson,
sorry, and notification that Mark Wheatley will be joining online.
which he has. Yeah, thank you very much, Town Clerk. Just to say a couple of things. One, the housing regulator is observing our meeting again. You obviously performed so well last time, they want to watch you again. And secondly, thank you, Judith and Kalila. Kalila will be taking over from as our Town Clerk going forward, but this is her first meeting, so Judith is coming here to show her it's done. Yeah, go on, sorry, Town Clerk, go on. Okay.
Are there any other apologies for absence? No, thank you. So moving to item 2, I've not received notice of any declarations of interest. Are there any members who would like to make one now? No, thank you.
And if I'll just deal with the minutes. Unfortunately, we do not have the minutes. People who were at the last meeting will remember that Polly Dunn came in at the last minute to take our minutes, but unfortunately she has not managed to complete them by today. So I've asked her to, when they are finished, for us to circulate them as soon as they are done. Hopefully that will be in the next week. And then obviously we will have the opportunity in January to agree them and talk about any matters arising. So I hope that's acceptable to the subcommittee. To be fair, you don't have an awful lot of choice about that. Okay, thank you. Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to convey Polly's sincere apologies for not having the minutes available. Thank you. Moving to item 4 is the outstanding action tracker.
Okay, thanks. Any comments on this? No, I think there's some dates that need to be adjusted, Peter, going forward, but other than that, I think we're happy. Okay, thank you. Town Clerk.
Item 5 is an antisocial behaviour policy update. This is a spotlight item which will be accompanied by a presentation. The slides were circulated by email yesterday afternoon, and hard copies have been laid around the table for members. Helen Chantry will be presenting the reports.
Yeah, thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Over to you. Sorry, Peter, did you want to say something first? Oh, yes, use your microphone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Theatrical impression. Thank you very much. So I've been given a really good seat in the House today, thanks to the chair, so that I don't have to stand up. So it's much appreciated. So to go alongside my policy amendment update to committee, I've also brought a small presentation which, to put it into context, was something that members raised after the most recent tour to the out of borough estates. Members arrived at Avondale, which is in Southwark, and made some comments about antisocial behaviour, and from there it was thought that possibly an option is to discuss the various points that members raise, and also to give you a context of what is antisocial behaviour and what it means. So slide number 1. So behaviours that negatively impact residents' quality of life. Now, there is a statutory definition which I'm going to read, so I apologise, because it's the legal bit, and obviously it's a statutory responsibility for the City of London to report on antisocial behaviour and also to manage it. So ASB, statutory definition of antisocial behaviour, is defined in the 2014 ASB Crime and Policing Act, and it's called conduct that has caused or is likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress to any person. This also includes conduct capable of causing a housing-related nuisance or annoyance to a person in their home, or a nuisance or annoyance to a person in relation to their occupation of residential premises. So from our perspective at the City of London, we've got two areas to take into consideration. So one is how we manage antisocial behaviour on housing estates, and one is how we manage antisocial behaviour that's perpetrated by visitors to our tenants and leaseholders. And then in conjunction with community safety, we would work with any antisocial behaviour issues that come onto our estates, and there is a point to that which I'm going to cover shortly. So moving on to slide 2, our legal and regulatory duty. So all social landlords, that's local authorities and housing associations, are legally required to address antisocial behaviour. So it goes without saying, with the regulator paying attention to our meeting, that the RSH Neighbourhood and Community Standard Tenant Satisfaction Measures, TP10, underpins this work and requires us to keep neighbourhoods clean and safe, prevent and address ASB, and involve residents in shaping services. And you'll see later on that we will be covering off, or my colleague will be covering off, the Tenant Satisfaction Measures Action Plan and Report. So what's going on with the City of London? An overview. So we have lower antisocial behaviour rates than in other boroughs. There is no centralised ASB enforcement team. That is only the city, and that's only within the square mile. And that is a typical local authority centralised team. However, we have the challenge of the out of borough estates. So we rely heavily on partnerships with the city police and external agencies, and our focus is on early intervention and non-legal remedies before formal action. And essentially what that means is we take a balanced approach to looking after our residents, so we don't necessarily jump on them like other agencies might or other local authorities might do. We work to support them, and in the process of that we work very heavily with Calm Mediation, who we've been partnering with for the past 13 years, and they ensure that we are helping our residents work with each other on a neighbourhood level, and also working with us to support residents with more complex cases before we have to take any enforcement action. And the policy paper will also point out that we need to look after the perpetrators and ensure that they are supported just as much as we need to look after victims. So moving on quickly, because I understand that time is of the essence. Housing management and tenancy enforcement. So we've covered off support for victims and vulnerable residents. We need clear tenancy agreements outlining expectations and consequences, and we will be bringing an update on the tenancy agreement to committee in the new year. And we've got the option for legal action or eviction for serious persistent ASB, the type that we would probably involve the police with, or community safety, that might include hate crime, harassment and other matters of criminal nature. So the focus being on the Avondale estate, I thought it might be interesting for members to see the difference with what happens on the Old Kent Road, which is the main road that the estate leads from, and the actual impact of crime on the estate itself. Now, 12 Acres House mentioned there, that's actually where the estate office is situated, and this is based on the fact that the Metropolitan Police don't identify direct addresses or postcodes, so they'll pick a location within an area and they've used that. It also happens to be where the estate office is based. So you'll see that the Old Kent Road, the types of crime are quite outstanding. And the context to this slide is that the data is aggregated from August 2024 to August 2025. And rather than showing you a month-by-month basis, I thought it would be easier to see the total types of crimes committed in that 12-month period. So you'll see, for example, antisocial behaviour is our first point. There's very, very minimal antisocial behaviour reported to the police with a crime reference number or so on, but there is a substantial amount outside of the estate. And the other points that I wanted to raise, which I thought were interesting, is shoplifting. So the actual figure for shoplifting in that 12-month period on the estate or around the estate was 2 crimes, whereas outside the estate there's less shops, there's small shops, you've got Asda and Morrison's and so on. The other were drugs at the end. There's almost nothing reported. Weapons and, I can't read the last one, criminal activity and arson. So we can see actually the types of crimes are very varied, but the housing estate receives almost none of them. And I think this is important in that residents don't typically call 999 on their neighbours. What they might do is they might go to the estate office and raise a complaint, but they're more likely not to do that because people don't want to essentially cause trouble with their neighbours. So in the future, and part of our ongoing actions, we're going to do some work to manage that. So moving on to the next slide. So in context with the types of crime outside the estate spilling onto Avondale Square, which is the Avondale estate, we've got non-residents using the estate as a shortcut, and that is quite consistent with some of the types of crime that we're seeing on the estate through the Metropolitan Police data on the previous slide. We do have some trouble with drug issues, but they're not reported on the crime map. So it's interesting that these things are not being called through by residents. There are some thefts and robberies. There are some groups gathering on estate grounds, and we know that from the amount of graffiti at the far end of the estate, which has now been addressed through a project, which I'll talk about shortly. There is some low-level vehicle crime, as you would expect, because people are running in, they're smashing a window, doing whatever, and then running off the estate again, because it's a very short way to do that. And then there's sort of low-level noise disorder and late-night disturbances, which essentially is low-level ASB, although the residents themselves might not feel that that's the case. So what are we doing? Next slide, please. So in the next steps in engagement. So as you're aware, we're doing the household survey, which is behind part of the Every Door programme. Now, internally, we do refer to this as the tenancy audit, and I am at pains to ensure that we call it correctly the household survey. So if you do hear that name in the future, it is the household survey. So the anticipated project kickoff is mid-January 2026 for all our tenanted properties, and we will be keeping you updated with briefings along the way. We have a noise app, which I think we can do a lot more with. It helps us identify statutory noise nuisance, which is something that we would get involved with, versus household noise, which in the tenancy agreement, essentially, there is some reasonable level of household noise allowed. We're going to do more work to promote the app on estates. We're going to get support from our comms team and our housing staff. Community involvement. Part of the challenge is engaging with residents and helping them see the positives. And we just very recently, in fact, yesterday evening, had the Avondale Mural Project and the Cut Ribbon event. So this comprised of 3 art workshops on the estate with residents and pupils from the local Phoenix Primary School in conjunction with the Residents Association, and it was to overcome the graffiti that had appeared on some derelict garages, and it's a really positive event. It was extremely oversubscribed. And we will be bringing a future report to committee which demonstrates just how effective that was. So last but not least, ongoing actions. So the way to resolve some of the challenges that the estate faces from transient crime, which is predominantly the majority of what we're dealing with, is physical security and environmental design changes. Put simply, what that means is door security, CCTV, and cutting back the bushes. And our partners at the community safety team are willing to help us fund certainly the last part, and we're updating the CCDV with some assistance from a grant. So I'm not asking you for money today. That may change next time though. Police and enforcement strategies. We do need to implement security patrols and a safer neighbourhood approach. And I'll be working with our partners in the Southwark, Southwark offices to ensure that that takes place. Youth engagement and prevention. Well, one of the actions that we did was the mural project, which was managed by the special projects team. And also there's options to work with local football clubs or well-known football clubs in this case to run free sessions on the Mooga once that's been improved. Estate management and resident actions. We're looking at stronger enforcement and implementing a neighbourhood watch programme, which will be done in conjunction with the Safer Neighbourhood Police, and allows residents to get a level of control over the information that's being passed out, because it's clear that there's a gap in what's actually taking place in the wider environment and what we know about on the estates themselves. And in conjunction with that, also we've got the Behind Every Doors programme, and we will be raising ASB antisocial behaviour matters with residents along the way. So you'll be pleased to know I've now concluded, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thank you, Helen. I'm sure somebody's got some questions. John's going to start. If so, have you got your microphone on? Someone put it on for you.
Thank you. Yep, thank you for that. My experience from my inbox from the east of the city is that what I get here most about antisocial behaviour isn't crime, and I'm pleased to say crime, you're quite right, is very low. It's noise. And that seems to be the predominant complaint that fills my box. Strangely enough, not people having late night parties and things like that. It comes down to DIY more than anything else, and people deciding to put a shelf up at midnight or something like that. My experience again from Middlesex Street, and I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues from Golden Lane feel about this, is that it's often dealt with at the first step by the estate manager, and who contacts the parties. And I'll give him a name check. Matt Ring on Middlesex Street does extremely well. But my question is, how much training is given to the staff in the front line of the dealing with the antisocial behaviour, particularly around noise? That's question number one. Question number two, how frequently do we remind our tenants and leaseholders of their responsibilities when it comes to making noise the hours? Thank you.
Thanks, John. Helen, let's just see if anybody else has got any questions or comments to make, and then we'll come back to you, Sarah.
A basic one about how we're going to know that whether or not this is really making a difference. So I take your point absolutely. I hear the point absolutely about the household survey creating a baseline. I understand that we're transitioning to Civica, but I also hear a sort of question mark about how willing people are to report on these issues. So when we look at all of that together, what's our assessment about what it's really going to take to understand whether or not any of this is making a difference?
Deputy Chair.
Sorry, thank you. Just in terms of the youth engagement, we got really good feedback on the walkabout about the stuff with the mural and everything that had happened over at Avondale. So that was brilliant work. But I'm just wondering as well, in terms of why not use a football club from South London? I'd say that's probably just my suggestion as a football fan.
Yeah, that's a Crystal Palace supporter, actually.
Not naming any names.
I just have.
Thank you. That's my only question. Thanks.
Okay, Helen.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the question from my perspective is something about thresholds of tolerance, because I think that what is a real nuisance and considered antisocial behaviour by one person is just a bit of a minor irritation to somebody else. And so it's how we determine what is really fits with the definition of antisocial behaviour, or whether it's just a bit of lack of respect or intolerance of something or other. The second point is that thank you for comparing Avondale and Old Kent Road. I'd be quite interested, and I don't see this as an urgent piece of work, but at some point to see some sort of comparator to other of our estates. And I'm not looking necessarily for the raw numbers or data, but the trends to see whether it's similar things on similar estates and whether there's a kind of a pattern, if you like, that we should be thinking about. And the final point is, sorry if I was just being a bit IT deficient, but it would be really helpful to have a link for the 2024 antisocial behaviour policy, because then I think I'd probably be able to make a bit more sense of the changes that you're intending to insert, because at the moment I don't know how that will read or how it adds value. I mean, you've included them, so I'm fairly sure they do add value, but I haven't got the context for that. Thanks.
Thanks. Layla?
Could you explain how the mural project led to the removal of graffiti? Did you actually use local people to help with that? Thank you.
Okay, and Anne? We don't want you to contribute.
Yes, on our visit to the estates, it was the groups of young people gathering on the estate grounds, which seems to cause most concern. So who disperses these groups from the Old Kent Road? I suspect it's the Met. And what is our strategy for engaging with the Met? Because it's okay moving the problem from one part of London to another part, but I think it's not fair on the people who live there. And also, in terms of the funding from the community safety team, is that short-term funding, long-term funding? What's the strategy around that? And will it be used, for example, park guard? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all of the comments. Right, Helen. I could see you've scribbled away there, so. Microphone though. Well done.
There we go. Thank you. So, John, noise issues. I would agree with you based on what I've seen so far. And yes, DIY. I know there's been some challenges recently with contractors, which isn't DIY, but it has the same effect, in other words. So I will look at that. I won't answer that now, but I will bring that back at another time. Training on noise and how to understand noise is a very good point. And we have got training, which answers another one of the questions coming on down the line. ASB training arranged for the colleagues April next year. So that's going to be something that we're going to continue with, because what's happening in the wider environment and government legislation and how community safety works and our various priorities is always changing. So it helps us all keep up to date and relevant. So again, we'll be reporting back on the progress of that to you. I hope that's okay.
Just to clarify, the last training we held on ASB was in April 24. It's next scheduled for April 26.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, assessment and an ASB campaign. So we do have an ASB campaign planned. It's part of measures that I'm bringing in to ensure that we have a community engagement diary that's visible, so that moving forward, colleagues and residents are aware of what initiatives we're bringing in. And first on the agenda will be the tenancy agreement and a consultation, and our second project, which will be at the beginning of next year, will then be antisocial behaviour, and we will run that in conjunction with the Behind Every Doors household survey approach, so that residents are aware of what options that they've got, whether it's additional residents associations, whether it's joining different focus groups, which might be antisocial behaviour, because there is a lot of perception around that, or whatever. So that is planned. I hope I've got this in. I think, Kerry, you were next. You talked about youth engagement. Thank you for your positive feedback. That's appreciated. South London football, I apologise. I am a football novice, so I'm happy to take any suggestions. But I did put, if you notice in the slide, e.g. Chelsea. It's because I've had connections with them in the past, and it seemed that it might be useful to bring that down to this part of London. But obviously happy to take any suggestions. I know football is quite a theme in the City of London stars. I'm not going to say anymore. I'm moving on swiftly.
Yeah, move on.
Very swiftly. I believe then we had Helen Now you asked 3 questions. Your question number 1 was, what is the threshold of tolerance? And you also commented on, is that related to respect? And what we're looking for is, we do want our residents to get on well with each other, whether they're a tenant of a leaseholder or a leaseholder, or visiting. We want everyone to enjoy coming onto our estates and everyone to get along. Now, that's in an ideal world. Obviously, we don't live in that environment. But you're right about tolerance. And I think that moving forward, if we don't know what's happening behind people's doors and we don't know the conversations they're having with their neighbours, we could end up finding that there's an incident that's essentially escalated over a period of time, which we could have dealt with and managed at a much lower level. And it's understanding why residents aren't telling us about it. So I'm hopeful that the campaign to raise awareness about antisocial behaviour, which is not dissimilar to the campaign we've run with the complaints. It's okay to complain. We will deal with your complaints. The same approach we'll take with ASB. It's absolutely fine. And also you will be able to report it in confidence. I think that's a key message, because people want to tell us things, but they don't want our names to, they're the main names to be mentioned. So I think that's a key part to that. So I'm very happy to come back and bring back additional information on other estates. Avondale was just the first one, so we can do a series of them, and we can then over time build up a picture and the trends to see what's happening. I apologise that you didn't get the link to the policy, the additional version 3 ASB policy. I'm sorry for the oversight of that. That should have been in the paper document, but can circulate that afterwards. So that you can see, and obviously I will then bring back the paper so you can actually see where the changes have been. But really today the approach is for committee to approve the changes, and then I will insert them so you can all see where they've been amended, and then you have that in context. And then I believe there was one more, Anne. You asked, I beg your pardon. Graffiti, thank you. So the graffiti, and I can send images out. I didn't want to put them on the slides, so take the slides, they're very heavy graphics. I can send that out so you can see what it looked like beforehand, and it was derelict garages that may or may not get rebuilt on or brought down. Huge graffiti, big tags, and the project essentially was to design a new facade for that. So to overwrite the graffiti and put something really quite spectacular in place. And it's been so successful that residents are now making their way to that. They're coming out of their way to visit that part of the estate, which was obviously an unloved corner. And it's now taken on a different vibe, and residents are very protective over it, and they've asked for an anti-graffiti cover to be put over it so that it can be washed down easily. So if anyone does come back and do some bad stuff, it can be dealt with, and the children's work and the residents' work is not going to be affected. So they've essentially, yes, they've painted over it and it looks spectacular, and I will ensure that the town clerk sends those photographs out to you. So, Anne, the Met groups and dispersal. So we've got good relationships with our City of London police, but they're our police. So it's much easier to work with them than it is with the Met. For example, getting the data for some of the visualizations that I wanted to bring today, we've had to go to the Home Office. And that's going to be a very long time coming. So we've had to make do with what we could aggregate from publicly available sources. So it's not easy to engage, but we are going to work on it, and we do need to work with community safety, the safer neighbourhood teams in Southwark. And regarding your question about funding, funding is in the short term to manage essentially hotspots on the estate where knives could be hidden, drugs could be stashed, and so on, which is essentially what you would do. You would make it difficult for people to run through the estate, you know, throw their stash away and then come back at a later point and retrieve it. So that's the starting point. That's our first point.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much, everyone, for your questions, and thank you very much, Helen. I think that obviously we need this back on the agenda going forward. I hope people are willing to agree the changes to the policy in Appendix 1 and 2. But I think when you come back next time, if we can have the complete policy in front of us, just so we can see how that links. And I think there's quite an appetite for the sort of information to give us about Avondale. to replicate that with some of the other estates.
Good.
Everyone
Thank
happy
you.
with that? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Town Clerk.
Moving on to item 6, which is Gateway 6 reports, closure of legacy reports. This is a series of reports for decision from page 15 to 42.
Okay, so these are closure reports. Greg, I don't know if you need to say anything or you just want to wait until there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just for clarity, these relate to some legacy projects from 2020 to 23. That's still on our financial and reporting systems, and it's part of our general housekeeping that my team's undertaking at the moment.
Okay, any comments, anyone? Sandra?
Thank you. I mentioned at the last meeting that, and that it may not be included in here because they're historical, but that it would be very helpful for us to see not only the cost to the city, but the cost that goes to leaseholders. And I mean, it's not just these papers, but any papers coming forward which talk about a cost. It would be very helpful to see the separation between the cost to the city and the cost to leaseholders. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we agreed that at the last meeting. We haven't got the minutes for the last meeting, but I think going forward, we'll obviously take that into account. So thanks, Sandra. People happy to agree with that? Okay, thank you. Town Clerk.
Thank you. And item 7 is tenant satisfaction measures, perception measures action plan. This is for information on pages 43 to 48 of the pack. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to have a few words on this, Peter. Are you doing this? Or was it the Angela?
Yeah, I was
Sorry, yeah.
just going to present on that. The tenant satisfaction measures for 2024-25 were reported to committee in June 25, and an update plan was asked to request what we doing to improve the perception measures. There are 12 perception measures and 10 management measures. The management measures are continued improvement that's constantly worked on. The 12 perception measures are based on the feedback from tenants and covers a wide variety of areas. For this year, we chose to follow the advice given to us by Acuity, who did our survey for us, and they picked up the areas that they felt that we should focus on to improve. So we have some strengths, which are that 75% of tenants felt that they were treated with fairly and with respect. 74% are satisfied with being kept informed about matters that affect them, and that satisfaction that homes are well maintained increased by 6 percentage points to 71 from the previous year. But we did have areas for improvement. Only 30% of tenants who made a complaint in the last 12 months were satisfied with the handling of their complaint, and satisfaction with communal areas and maintenance fell by 7 percentage points to 66.5%, and that was really disappointing. And the repair service and communication about repairs remained key as an area, a key feedback area in the surveys. So this year we just chose to focus on several areas which are all listed in the report, but there are key themes. So we tried to address how we can use digital tools to improve performance, staff training and customer service. They were the sort of key areas that repeated in most of the service improvements. And there's been quite a lot of work and a lot of progress, and things are definitely stronger this year than we were last year with a lot of the performance that we've done in these areas.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Leanne. Now, I think we do what I want us to discuss the complaints, the tenant's view of complaint service, but can we take that under the item on complaints rather than have a discussion now? Anything else anybody else wants to say on this item? Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. This is all very helpful. Can I just ask, was this the online survey where you got sent a link and then you could?
We two methods of doing the survey. Some are online and some are by telephone. We tried to do 20% online and 80% by telephone. So that was the one. Yes, it was the one.
Yeah.
That some people were sent a link.
And just out of interest, it'd be good to know how many people did you actually get responses from?
We met the standard requirement. I think it was 321. We aim for 475, which was what the ask of committee was, to get 25% of our tenants. And we're again this year asking to get 475 responses. We've extended the survey until the 12th of December this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have to meet a statutory deadline within plus or minus 5%, I think it is.
How hopeful are you that we're going to get more, hopefully, this?
We have had
It's a difficult question, Deputy.
It's a very difficult
Sorry.
question. We have had to pause the survey this year because we weren't, Acuity were doing constant telephone calls and we weren't getting responses by telephone. The problem is we're constantly telling people not to take numbers from some strange numbers, and then we're giving them telephone calls. So we've paused the survey and we've relaunched it this week. We've done a leaflet drop to every household with the telephone, with the leaflet.
I did get that, to be fair.
Well done. Good. That's good to hear.
So I can give
and
you
the
details
telephone
on that.
number. Save the phone number in your favourites.
Yeah.
So the telephone number, we are doing £5 £50 love to shop gift vouchers that will be drawn by Acuity as an incentive for tenants to take part. And we're just trying to socialise. Right. We're putting posters up on the estates. The ask of Acuity, because we've done all this extra work, is to get to that 475 plus.
All
right.
Okay. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Sarah was next, I think.
I think this is a Peter question. It was really helpful to see each of the issues broken out and your responses to each of the individual issues. And one of the things that sung out at me when I looked across all of them was that I think it looks like there's a sort of interesting set of cultural questions about communication and responsiveness, all of those sorts of things. So I just wanted to ask you, I guess, a leadership question about expectations on behaviour and communication and responsiveness, and how cutting across all of this, you see the leadership and culture challenges across this and what you're doing about that overarching.
Shall we take the other questions and then we'll do what we did last time? So sorry, I'm confused about who was next. Sandra,
Thank you. There's some of these headings are actually statutory requirements and some are not. And I think it would be quite helpful if we could understand which were statutory requirements, because obviously we have a bigger risk associated with them. I mean, I'm not wanting to play down the fact that we need to be a good landlord and keep people's places clean, but I think the statutory issues we need to be highlighted. On damp and mould, where there's a new statute, you've mentioned that here. You say you've got 10 working days to respond. What I don't understand, so this is just a question, is whether the 10 working days to respond means just respond and say, yes, we've got your complaint, or does it include the remedial work? And if it doesn't include the remedial work, how long is your KPI for the remedial work?
Okay, thanks. Helen.
Thank you. I did find this report extremely interesting, so thank you for that. I guess that 2 or 3 specific points, though. There are a lot of actions in here, and some of them have got a percentage target, some of them have got the timeline. What I can't easily extract is exactly what some of the more precise actions might be and by when. So I would find it even more helpful to have a table which says, this is the action, this is what we said we'd achieve, this is when we said we'd achieved it, and we did or we didn't. Because it's quite hard to extract that from a narrative report. The second point is that I'd be quite interested, and maybe this is part of the complaint, so if we're pushing it back, fine, but I'd be quite interested to know what the differences are between the estates. So, is it more likely that if you live on estate X, you're going to get a faster response than if you live on estate Y? And that could be for all sorts of reasons, but I'd quite like to understand if we've got any differential behaviours that we should focus on. And the final point was, sorry, what was the final point? Oh yeah, CCTV and Middlesex Street. I think that we need to do some cross communicating between some different projects, because CCTV upgrades on Middlesex Street, as I understand it, a part of the police project, and it will not be delivered in 25-26 is my memory of the conversation we had last week. I might be wrong about that, but it's just to make sure that we're clear that where there's more than one project running, that we've got clarity on delivery dates. Otherwise, you could look like you've slipped, but actually it's for a very good reason because it's part of something else now.
Thanks. Okay, everyone. Right, Peter, do you want to have a go at responding?
Right, so if
Sorry.
leadership across the piece, about the themes of communication, customer service, etc. They are to an extent covered in the annual plan, and they were picked up as part of that because they came out of the Pennington review. They're reflected in the housing strategy, and Leanne has been doing work for some time on introducing a programme of Mary Gober training. And Mary Gober customer care training is used throughout the sector because it's not just, it goes deeper than other programmes of customer care training do. And there's a whole programme of follow-up and embedding and giving staff the tools and managers the tools to keep promoting customer service. Also, some of the sessions are really good in that they get people to question what good customer service is, how they play a part, and also about not being overtly negative, because some people, you think customer service is about just apologising to everybody, and actually what it is about looking at what's happened and seeking ways to actually improve service. So it's a quite well used process throughout this housing and other sectors and local government, and that's been going on for some time in the city.
Yeah, we trained 88 staff with in person last year, and we've now just launched a refresher online training. And what's quite good about it, it's 20-minute sessions, so it's you can go in and dip out of the training, but you can see the progress of the timeline and how it works. So the refresher is quite a good offer.
Okay, I suppose what we're interested in is how impactful it is, how it's changed behaviours. So I think coming back at a later stage, we'll want some information about that, Peter.
Yeah, and I think we hope to see it reflected in people's responses to questions in the TSMs, for example, about customer service and feeling listened to and engaged with. So that's how most organisations will track it.
Okay, and then the other questions, are you going to?
Damp and mould.
Yeah, damp and mould.
AWAB's law.
Yeah.
It came in 27th of October. Emergency hazards, immediate risk to health or safety is action within 24 hours. Significant hazards, real risk but not imminent, investigation within 10 days.
But what I think the question is we'll respond to it, but what are the time limits in terms of when we're going to fix it?
That's quite a difficult one because at the moment our contractors, we've had a big leap in cases because of our what's the thing we're doing, the survey?
Damp and mould survey.
No, not the damp and
Stock
mould.
condition survey.
Stock condition survey. Our cases increased from sort of 50, from 8 to about 50 or 60 within a couple of weeks. So that our contractors are actually having difficulty meeting the sort of the repairs timelines on those, but that obviously it's within as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, well, I'm glad Sandra asked that question. I think Peter probably wants to respond to it as well.
So what's very interesting is that the stock condition survey is identifying cases of damp and mould which haven't been reported by residents, and I can confirm the figure, but very few of them are significant hazards. So they would fall into the need to be dealt with category rather than the super urgent, where you have to have a plan of action compiled in 24 hours. So most of them are low level, but we've only identified them as a result of doing the stock condition survey. They haven't been brought to us necessarily by residents.
Okay, I think the subcommittee would like a report on this in January. Then we want to know that we're on top of this. Yeah, there was a couple of other questions asked.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
on the end.
estates, we did do a deep dive into the results on where there's two estates that scored lowest were York Way and Golden Lane. And I think it was reflected on the building work being done on both estates. So we have done a paper on that. I can share that.
Okay, that would be good. I think we'd like to see that.
And also the action plan, the original action plan is in a table format with timelines and dates. So we do have it in that format.
We'll be getting that back at some point then, the
Yes.
subcommittee, yeah, okay. When will we be getting it back?
We can bring, I think it'll be a series of bringing it back, but we can certainly come back to you at January's meeting with an update.
Okay, thank you. Okay, people happy with that then? Okay, thank you. Town clerk.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8 is the resident voice group update, and this is for information on pages 49 to 58 of the pack.
Okay, is it going to be Sam? Was going to be you, Peter? Who is it?
Sam.
Sam. Do you want to just say a few words of introduction, Sam?
Yeah, thanks everyone. This is just to update on members on the progress of the resident voice group, which came out of our resident involvement strategy, which is a group that will bring us in line with the expectations for the regulator for social housing in terms of direct tenant involvement and scrutiny and governance. So there's just some background there for people. We ran an application process where we invited all our residents to apply to be part of the group. We had 18 applications, and Helen and I assessed them, and we chose 7 residents, 5 tenants and 2 leaseholders from across our estates. There's just one slight error in the report on where those residents are from. We have residents from South Bank Estates, Golden Lane, Isledon and Avondale as part of the group. And so far they've met once. We had a very good first meeting where we talked, well, we had to review the terms of reference and the code of conduct, which are here as appendices, but we talked about the purpose of the group and the areas they'd like to focus on. We've got our second meeting on the 2nd of December where the residents have chosen to focus on repairs. So we've invited Beverly Andrews and Subhash Patel to come along and present information about repairs and also take questions. And from that, they may choose to do a further deep dive into particular areas. It's up to residents. I think the key thing I sort of want to emphasize is this group is being led by the residents. So the subject areas they choose and how they choose to scrutinize our services is up to them. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on getting the next level.
Thank you. The report states that this group represents all of the city estates, not just the ones they happen to live in. How are we ensuring that these people that can represent the estates that they don't live on? How do they understand the issues, particularly as you just said that they decide on the priorities? How would they know if they don't live there?
Let's do some other questions first, and then either Peter or Sam will come back. Helen.
I had a slightly different interpretation of this to Sandra, because in reading this, and if I've got the wrong perspective, please correct me. I didn't think these people were representatives of their estate. They're there representing housing in a more general sense. And there's nothing that's in here that is intended to replace any other formal comms process that we might have, and nor is it about usurping the role of resident associations in any way. And the detailed discussion would be on an estate specific issue, would be as it has been before with the resident associations. Is that right?
Any other questions? I think that where we as a subcommittee need to be brought up to date about this. So I think officers are a bit ahead of us here. So what I've asked Peter to do in January is to bring us back a report saying all the ways in which we as a corporation and a landlord are communicating with our tenants. Because as Helen has said, this is one way we're doing it, but these people are not representative I suppose if anything, they are people that we're engaging because they have particular knowledge and have a particular view, which will then eventually come back to us as a subcommittee and will inform our thinking going forward. But I do think we just need a little bit of time as a subcommittee to understand how Peter and her team are putting all these bits of communication and consultation together. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Can I just quickly
Sam.
come back, which is to say, just to sort of reassure members, but Helen, your version is broadly correct. Yes, they're there to do a strategic review, but as part of this group, we are offering and providing training to the people on the group to sort of come back to your point, so that they can understand how to assess strategically the issues that all our residents are facing from the data that we're providing with them, rather than just their sort of local perspective. And we're training them to be able to do that, but it is that approach that's a strategic scrutiny across all our services, rather than the local approach, which will still be supporting residents associations, surveys, door knocking, whatever it might be, for consultation on the kind of
Thanks, Sam. So we'll have more of a conversation about this in January. Thanks. Town Clerk.
Thank you. Item 10 is the housing complaints update. Number 9. Oh, apologies. Item 9 is the quarterly fire safety report. This is for information on pages 59 to 62 and will be presented by Paul Barton.
Yes, Paul, you can say a few words on this.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first of the quarterly fire safety status reports that we have. This came from the recommendation from internal audit in September 2023. The report shows that it's a risk-based approach that we're taking, and the fire safety management across the portfolio is spearheaded by fire risk assessment. The report talks about the current position on the turnover rate in completion and new actions arising from fire risk assessment, and then it looks at the current position in the major works team, current position in the repairs and maintenance team, the housing management team, health and fire safety team itself, and then the monitoring and reporting capability on that position. And it's an information report, and really to open to the committee for questions.
Any questions? Anne.
Thanks very much, Paul. This was really useful because it got me thinking about this whole issue. Unfortunately, I've got 7 questions, which I could just read out and then maybe get a written response, but I think they are important questions. And my questions are framed by the advice given by the London Fire Brigade to local councillors. So there's published advice to us as local councillors. So the first thing, it'd be really useful in a report like this to have the links to the various bits of legislation, because it is very complicated, and I appreciate that. So if I just read out the questions, not necessarily wanting answers today, is that okay, Chair?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so how many City of London blocks have an up-to-date fire risk assessment? So the advice to any local authority is that there should be a comprehensive risk assessment, up-to-date risk assessment. Is there an emergency evacuation plan for every block? Your report mentioned the training for estate supervisors. They're doing inspections. So what is the training for estate supervisors? What are the contractual relationships in place with leaseholders regarding their responsibilities in relation to fire? What is in place to make sure that residents know what they need to do in the event of a fire where they live in their block? And how does the City of London as local authority report fire safety compliance to its residents? Well, thank you.
Okay, they're really useful questions, and I think you're probably right that we as a subcommittee probably need a written response about that eventually. Let's see what else people have got to say. Simon.
Thank you. My point is on page 62. Under corporate and strategic implications, it states there are no legal implications and no risk implications. I can't see how that can be possible when we're dealing with statute. There must be legal implications. And there must be risk implications because we're talking about fire safety. So, I mean, they really ought to be covered in that section.
Thank you, Sandra, for that. Sarah, did you have your hand up? I can't remember.
Well, you see, you caught me sort of deciding whether or not to ask a question. Noting the data on page 60, 29th of October 2025, 47 high priority actions, 569 and 407 low priority actions still outstanding. I absolutely understand we're in a remedial programme, but my goodness, that looks like a high number. How long do we think it is going to take us to get through that backlog? And what would we expect a steady state to look like there? You know, what does good look like at any point in time?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, Deputy Chair, I didn't see you. Sorry.
No. Thank you. Just to follow on from Sarah's point, can I? It'd be good to just get some more information about what is a high priority action and how long you're then expected to resolve it, basically, if that's helpful. And also just a bit more detail about how it then falls to medium and low. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, it does again appear that we need a more detailed report back to subcommittee in the near future, hopefully January, if that's possible. Sort of addressing these issues. But Paul, do you just want to give a quick response to the questions you've had?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody for the questions. Links to legislation, that's very easy to do. How many blocks have an up-to-date fire risk assessment? All of them. Emergency evacuation plans, many are on stay put policies. We can clarify that in the reply. Training for the estate supervisors, have to come back to you on that. That will be in the reply. Contractual relationships with leaseholders, I don't know the answer to that one, so I'll have to seek further advice on that. Information to residents is through the estate offices and through the resident services team. How do we report compliance to residents? Again, that will be through that channel. No legal implications. Yes, possibly misunderstanding there. No legal implications in the contents of this report, but legal implications certainly on all fire-related matters. Information on how long, that was something that I should reply in writing, Chair, because there's quite a lengthy response to that, and that's not resolved yet in terms of policy, corporate policy. How long? Yeah, that would be in that same reply as well. So,
okay, definition. Anything to say about definition of?
Yeah, there is no mandatory definition on timescales, and the current timescales are very tight for completion of actions within the high, medium, and low level. So that is what we're reviewing at the moment.
Okay, so when you say high priority, that's high priority in terms of time to fix it, rather
indeed,
than
and the action itself. Yes, the risk-based priority.
Okay, Lisa, I think you wanted to say.
So, for example, a high priority action could be somebody's done an inspection and they found a corridor which is a fire exit blocked. That's very straightforward to deal with. You just get somebody there to move it. It could also be something which would need major works to resolve. So then that becomes part of a programme. That's why it's like trying to pin down jelly sometimes. But this report, sorry, I don't mean to sound facetious, but this report was the first attempt to sort of just bring this out in a separate report, that the questions are ones that we can answer and update in February, if not before. Actually, some of these are very straightforward to answer. And so we've taken a steer from this discussion that we need to put a bit more of the granular in to reassure committee that actually we are doing things in this arena, and with the advent of Paul being on here working with colleagues.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we'll have a report in the next subcommittee, which will answer the questions, but also if you can give subcommittee the answers to the questions that Anne raised. Anne wants to come back.
Yeah, I just think it's really important that residents know what to do in the event of a fire. If there's a stay put policy, then all the residents need to know that, and it needs to be displayed in all buildings so that they know what to do. And we know what the controversy around stay put is following Grenfell. So I think it's really important that residents understand what to do and what their responsibility is.
Ellen, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the evacuation point, we do have residential personal evacuation plans in place for residents who've been identified with mobility issues or vulnerabilities where they need support or assistance to evacuate. And that's there's more work to be done on that. And by April 2026, there is funding available from the government in order for us to do more work and more training. And our PEEPs, which is the acronym, are being reviewed at the moment, and also will be updated with the household survey, because that's part of our getting behind the front door and updating that. So it's a multiple focused approach.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so people happy with that? We'll have a report back to the next meeting. Okay, thank you. 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Next item is item 10, which is the housing complaints update. This is for information.
Thank you. I think Anna's going to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to apologise for the error on page 73. I've circulated an updated page to members, so that's the tenant stage 2 responses. I accidentally repeated over the stage 1 data, which is why it looks slightly incorrect in the report. Secondly, I'd also like to just note with regards to the question about tenant satisfaction measures. So just for a little bit of context, the London Local Authority median for tenant satisfaction on complaints last year was 26.2%, and we performed at 30%. We were the 7th highest local authority in London. So across the board, satisfaction with complaints is generally lower, but that's not to say that we're not optimistic about improving that, and hopefully we will see an increase in this year's TSM satisfaction surveys. I would also like to just note that I know the report covers several areas. So we've got the complaints report and the data that was provided. We drilled down into this data in quite a lot of detail at the beginning of the month. So on the 7th of November, we had an internal complaints learning panel. We really looked at the data in detail, and we're trying to sort of draw out some lessons learned and action plans as a result of that. Alongside that, we have the letter from the Housing Ombudsman, so the performance report. This is the first year the City of London's ever received this performance report, because we had more than 5 determinations from the Housing Ombudsman, and we had 12 findings in total. We are continuing to monitor Housing Ombudsman determinations closely. There is still a degree of backlog. So, for example, we received a determination this month, which was off the back of a complaint that was responded to in February 2024. So some of the learning, some of the findings that we get from the Ombudsman, we're finding that we have already started to implement some service improvements, which is good news. We also sent a response to the Housing Ombudsman off the back of that report, just to give an update on what we're doing, and we shared this with all staff. Alongside this, I've also got 2 self-assessments. So we've got the damp and mould self-assessment updates. You might remember that we brought that last November, the first iteration, and then a self-assessment on repairing trust. We're trying to self-assess against the Housing Ombudsman's spotlight reports, just so we can see where we're at and what we can do to improve. And that was developed largely by Bev Andrews, who's not here today, but I'm happy to take away any questions specific to those if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Any comments or questions? Jeb.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna, and your team. So I know you've been doing a lot of work on complaints. Can I just ask that? So, sorry, on one of them, you confirmed, I think, in the data that for some reason a complaint wasn't acknowledged within the standard 5 days. Do we know why?
Yep, sure. In this particular instance, this was at the start of Q1 and it wasn't handed over to our team in time. So we would measure the timescale from the day that the resident makes the complaint, not necessarily to when we receive. There are, of course, some instances just in which administrative errors do happen. So I'll pay that case. Okay.
Yeah, I want to go back to some of the comments on the tenant satisfaction measures report and the relationship between the tenants' level of satisfaction with the data that you present here. So, for example, it says 30% of tenants making a complaint in the last 12 months were satisfied with the handling of the complaint. I mean, I don't know how you would be managing the complaints process are able to deal with a comment like that through the process, or is there some other mechanism that we need to have in place whereby you can, and the housing management team perhaps can look at satisfaction against the clear data of response times, because there's something that's not quite connecting in people's minds, I suspect.
Can I just say, I think it could, both could be true, because obviously when we go to tenant satisfaction, people could be thinking about a complaint they made years ago. Whereas what Anna's information is from people that have made complaints now.
Sure, I mean, I understand that point, which is why I said there's a difference between reality and perception. But nevertheless, if people perceive that to be the case, it's still a point of concern that we need to get underneath. Even if it's historic, if people are still hanging on to it and reporting it, then that you know, that's perhaps not a helpful reflection. I think the other thing is that I think that from my observation of the process, and since you've really got a grip on it, I can see that the process and the response times have massively improved, and that's really, really positive, and hope that improvement can continue. I guess the other point of connection then, though, is how we then deal with the contractors, where a lot of the complaints arise from dissatisfaction with the contractors, or contractors not responding in the way that we might like them to. So it's that loop, if you like. How are we satisfied that we're closing that loop well enough to help us deal perhaps with some of the levels of satisfaction that people are reporting?
Okay, thanks, Anne. We'll take some other comments from members, Anna, and then we'll get you to come back. Mark, you want to say something?
Oh, great. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think it's a positive report, and I like Helen, I note the improvement and the performance against the median of London local authorities. But you mentioned that we sort of are learning lessons. Do we meet with other authorities and work out what, if there is best practice somewhere else, what we can take from a particular authority? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anne, did you have your hand up? You don't have to say.
No, I just want to say that it's great, but also to say that the manner in which Anna responds and your team responds to tenants has improved and is appreciated. So thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, everyone finished? Okay, Anna, do you just want to respond to those questions and comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to the satisfaction 30% that we received 24-25, I think it is important to note that those transactional surveys took place, was it last September? Yeah, and they relate to complaints that tenants made in the last 12 months. But the data that you're seeing in this report refers to Q1 and Q2 of this financial year. So we might see a slight difference. I do understand that it's difficult because you do see such a disparity between what we're providing and what satisfaction is. We are doing transactional surveys now on a monthly basis for our tenants. And you might see, I think it was towards the end of the data report that you'll see transactional data. Some months we are performing much better across the board. We are performing better in terms of our transactional data. And what we're doing there is we receive the raw data back from the transactional surveys. And if we're picking up on long-term issues, we are making contact with tenants to have conversations with them about what's gone wrong. I think also it's important to note that a lot of the information that I'm providing is about statutory compliance with timescales. Something that I'd really like to work on, and something that I'm working with management to try and improve, is our follow-ups. So we may be responding within timescale, we may be providing the information that's required, but an area that I think across the board needs to be picked up is how we are following up on those complaints and how we're making sure that residents are happy. So one thing that we do already is we have a weekly meeting with the property services team, and we keep the complaint open until we've had a post inspection or verbal, or verification from the resident that they are happy to close the complaint. But I think we've done a lot of work in the last year about becoming sort of compliant with timescales, and the next step now is to really look at the lessons, look at the areas for service improvement, and drill down into those. So that's something that I'm doing, working across with housing management and repairs in particular. In terms of how we deal with contractors, I think that's sort of fed into what we're trying to do at the moment. So I've been working quite closely with Sebastian, as the contract manager for Chigwell, and we're sharing feedback. So at the end of October, started to circulate a summary of lessons learned to officers, and this is something that's going to be shared with contractors, and we can try and identify if there are common themes and issues. I try my best to go along to contract management meetings and share feedback in specific cases where we've identified things, but I think that's definitely the next step, and my intention is to really start to drill down. In terms of meeting with other local authorities, I am a member of a group of London complaints managers. I'm attending a meeting on Monday in Kensington and Chelsea, so we do share best practice and learn from other local authorities.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, people happy to note this? Okay, thank you. 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Moving to item 11, which is rent conversions and government rent settlements. This is for information. Thank you.
I think Wendy's going to say a few words about this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so in about less than 20 minutes, the Chancellor should be announcing the details on any convergence plans, but I've just laid out what it would mean to the HRA, how many properties are currently not paying up to target rent, and we've identified the households that would be affected and have a proactive plan for contacting all of the residents who could potentially be affected by it, and making sure that we provide all the support that we can in the event that it is applied.
Okay, so as I understand it, Wendy will correct me if I'm wrong, is that up until now, in terms of determining people's rent, we have just applied the national formula. So we haven't had a decision to make. In terms of rent convergence, then depending on what the Chancellor says, it might be that we as a corporation might have to make a decision about whether we move towards rent convergence at £1, £2 or £3 a week. It depends what leeway we get from the government. If that is the case, then I think we need to, I'm not totally sure who's going to make the decision. It won't be the subcommittee. It may be CCS, it may be finance, it may be a combination of the two. But that's the context and we're in, because we don't normally have to make, as a corporation, decisions about rents. But this time, we probably will have to. Peter.
So I've been discussing this with Chamberlain's, and there is a report going on the budget to CCS in January, and it's been suggested, because this is now a live issue, that we contribute to that. So it's a further discussion, a further opportunity for members to think about what the implications might be, both for residents, but also for the health of the housing revenue account. So that's my understanding. So it's joint.
Yeah.
It's CCS plus finance, but going through CCS.
Sarah.
That was really helpful, Peter, noting that this is an issue of real significance, both to residents and our duty of care, and to the financial piece of the puzzle. I just had a clarifying question about the assumptions in relation to the major works budget. So is it, I think I read in here that the modelling in relation to the future HRA is assuming that the £2 a week convergence goes ahead. Is that right? Is that our core assumption in terms of where HRA will be, and therefore the contribution that HRA will be able to make to the major works programme?
Yes, but it's at this stage, it's just a working assumption, and I know it's difficult, but because we're looking at the major works programme, there's so much money involved. Actually, what this is about the health of the HRA, which funds staffing, repairs and maintenance. It's not, no need to apologise. It's not just the major works project. It's about the repairs service, staffing, the rent team. Yeah. It's everything.
It's revenue.
It's revenue.
This is revenue.
It's revenue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandra.
Thank you.
This £3 a week is important. We need to know the actual sum, but an idea of what level our rents are at. I have no feeling
You're not going to contextualise that those increases. I was in the comment on the draft questionnaire. I think it needs to be looked at in plain English because I mean even the opening paragraph is a business style of writing rather than a soft style of writing.
Wendy's listening very carefully.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, I went to a conference about this and they said you should never use the word convergence, first of all. So lesson learned, yeah.
Anne.
Yes, where are these 648 households? Are they in one place? Are they spread?
Any other questions? No. Okay, Wendy, do you just want to?
So yeah, the 648 are spread around. There are the majority percentage wise are Southwark, the South Bank Estates, which covers a wide area. And I think maybe Drawn House and York Way. So what the places that are really affected are families who have lived on the estates for a very long time. So new tenants are paying this much, and the tenants who have lived here for quite a long time, some are paying about 35 to 40 pounds less than neighbors with a similar property per week. So the whole purpose of this is just to bring it up to parity with what new tenants are paying. And if we wait for voids to be able to put formula rent on, then that could take many, many, many years.
Okay, yeah, I accept all that. It is a complex issue, well, a difficult issue for us to deal with. So let's see what the Chancellor has to say, and then we'll know the context within which we'll have to make some decisions. Town Clerk, did you see there's a note on there that Mark couldn't hear? I don't know if you can just check that he's now back to being able to hear. Okay, everyone happy to note this report? Thank you. Okay, Town Clerk.
Thank you. Moving to item 12, which is the housing sustainability update. Going to be presented by Rachel Evans.
There she is.
Thank you. So the sustainability report provides an update on current and upcoming housing sustainability projects. There are several key drivers behind the housing sustainability projects. Firstly, our internal climate action targets to achieve operational net zero by 2027 and net zero emissions across the full value chain by 2040. We're also facing increased regulation for heat networks in terms of consumer protection and technical standards. And thirdly, the government has proposed minimum energy efficiency standards for the social rented sector to achieve EPC Band C by 2030. So in terms of the work we're doing to achieve these standards, highlighted projects in the report include completed and proposed heat optimisation works at estates with communal heating to reduce energy use and therefore reduce resident energy bills, associated carbon emissions and increase thermal comfort. We're currently out to tender for a metering and billing provider to increase accuracy, transparency and support for residents on communal heat networks. A pilot project is currently underway using newly qualified domestic energy assessors via the Adult Skills and Education Service to carry out EPC surveys in homes where data is missing or expired. And if this pilot is successful, we'll roll out a wider EPC survey programme across all estates next year. Other energy efficiency projects underway include low energy lighting upgrades, particularly at Golden Lane Estate. We're currently exploring opportunities to use our allocation of the government's Warmer Homes social housing grant to upgrade 170 homes to at least an EPC Band C via double glazing upgrades, loft insulation top-ups, improved ventilation and heating controls. And longer term, we're working closely with the Climate Action Strategy team to align the 10-year Housing Major Works programme with energy efficiency and decarbonisation works. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Rachel. Any comments or questions? No, okay, thank you very much. Happy to this report. Thank you. Town Clerk.
Thank you. Item 13 is the housing matters update to be introduced by Peter Kane.
Okay, now remember everybody, this is Peter and I's attempt to put down on paper. So I think last time it did work quite well. So we'll take each of the items in turn and agree if or note each one, and then we'll move on to the one after. Okay, Peter.
So the first section of this report is an update on decent homes, about the current status and the proposed future changes. And I just wondered if members had any questions. I mean, in summary, our decent homes performance has dropped as a result of not doing the major works programme works on a number of estates. And the longer we don't do those works, the higher the decent homes number, non-decent homes number will rise. And also it's covered in the report, but we are waiting for the introduction of a new decent homes standard, which is going to be quite different to the existing one, which to a large extent, I think, focused on kitchens and bathrooms. The one that's coming down the track is likely to be broader. And so when we've been talking about major works and property and spend, we've been flagging the fact that there's likely to be more spend required, because we're not quite certain yet, though we're getting hints about what the financial implications of the changes might be. So this is one of those risks that we can't quite calculate at the moment.
Okay. Any questions or comments on decent homes, Sarah?
I mean, I think honestly, you've just pointed to it, and I'm after a quantification that you probably can't give. But I understand that the places where we're not meeting the decency standards now are largely around state of repair. So major works will make a big contribution to that. Fantastic. But along with the kind of kitchens and bathroom piece, the damp and mould piece in the future standards looks really significant. And it looks like the implication is that that's a place that we drive undecency. So my question is, what kind of work will it require to really get on top of that? Is that covered in the major works? What are the implications of that going forward?
Sandra?
Variation on Sarah's theme. You say that there's going to be a new standard. Does that mean that actually our numbers are going to be even worse? Because as far as I can see, we've got, if you add together the potentially non-decent to those that are, we've got 600 homes, which is a very large percentage of our stock. Is that going to get worse when we have a new standard?
Oh, no, Helen's got a question on decent homes as well. So it's
Yeah, sorry, I think this is a really important point, because what we consistently say is that our improvement programs are orientated to bringing all homes up to decent standard. And I think whilst we need to understand the impact of the lack of repairs and maintenance to date and the impact of decent home standards, I think that given that we are, I hope, in the final stages of being able to secure a very major capital investment, that capital investment through that major works programme is going to address what we anticipate is coming our way. And if there's any question or challenge to that, we need to know that, understand that very urgently.
Thank you. I'm just intrigued, how do we get the figures of knowing how many homes are or aren't in the decent homes? Because obviously at the moment there's a stock condition survey taking place, but it's not been completed. So if we could just get an update on that, please. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, that's decent homes, please.
So what work, thank you, Steve. What work will be required? We think that what's required is what we're planning to do for the major works programme, but also what Rachel has just talked about in terms of it bringing in CAS funding as well, which is why we're trying to dovetail the major works programme with CAS funding. But because of the delivery of the major works programme being largely post 27, we can't be definitive yet, because then that coincides with the new programme, the new CAS programme being announced. But we are talking to CAS about this so that they know this is coming down the track. We've been doing lots of work, Rachel's been doing lots of work on actually assessing homes. The EPCs that are being carried out as well will help with that too. So we're doing the preparatory work, hoping that we can get CAS funding, and as Helen has said, being hopefully close to securing the funding for the major works programme as well. But there are other sort of less hungry, money intensive issues which are being identified by the new standard, such as flooring. When you turn over a home, include making sure that there's flooring left there. At the moment, if there's flooring found, we usually take it out and leave people without any. That sort of thing is being covered in the new decent home standard. So it straddles from sort of quite expensive things to changing the way we do things with our empty properties, for example. So, you know, it's actually quite interesting, but it could be costly, but we are bearing that in mind. And Bev has already made some estimates about what she thinks the financial impact might be for the repairs budget, which is part of the revenue ask that we're making and will be part of the budget setting process. So we're trying to look at it from all angles. Sandra, things get worse with the new standard. It's forecast to come into action 2035-37. So they realise the impact of this because they've been talking to people for years about it. So we've got some time to get our act together, look at the results of the stock condition survey and see exactly what it means for us.
Right, and definition?
So, and then Helen will the major works programme address? I think I've addressed that. And Kerry, where do we get the information from? As you're right, the last full stock condition survey was in 2018. Luckily, we did 80% coverage, which is unusual but very positive. So we're using some of that data because it's property data, where we've also included the information that we get from responsive repairs and planned works as well. So at the moment, we've made a calculation which we've shared with the regulator and other bodies as our best guesstimate as to where we're at. But what has happened with the stock condition surveys that have been carried out so far, it hasn't been way off. So it is not a bad working assumption, but that's how we've been doing it to date.
Okay, thank you. Later.
When do you hope to know if you've secured the necessary funding for the major works programme?
Well, that's a question that will be coming to court in a couple of weeks' time. So if we all can vote for that in court, we would secure. Okay, housing action plan.
So the housing action plan, this is for 25-26, and you've seen it here before. It's basically a derivative of the housing strategy 25-29. We went for a 1-year plan for this year in an attempt to do some really fundamental foundation work, which is as described in the plan. What this does is it gives you a flavour of the progress that we've made to date, which is not bad. There's still some things that we need to pick up on, but the progress I think can be defined as steady. And these are the building blocks that we need to have in place to further develop the housing department.
Thanks. I wouldn't describe it as steady. I think this is an amazing piece of work that you and your team have done, Peter. So you've made great progress. That's great. Okay, people happy with this? Okay, thank you. Hand. Anything you want to say about this?
So I'm just going to find it.
That's it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So this is just a note that it's to say that it's been delayed because we want to take some time to make sure that the handbook update doesn't become obsolete as soon as it's issued. So Helen has come in and is doing some work with the team and others to make sure that we include everything that we need to include from ASB, a better understanding of what's coming through down the line through damp and mould, and the way we deal with empty properties, which is touched on slightly by the new decent homes policy coming down the track as well. So we just thought I know that members have been asking for this to be completed for some time, but there is so much just on the edge at the moment that to complete it without having all of that information, I think would be a waste.
Sure, committee will be happy to accept your recommendation. Yeah. Anne wants to say something.
It's great. I think the tenants would love to see this handbook. Will it include information about fire safety and stay put policy and all the things we've been talking about? And people not putting flammable materials on their balconies, for example?
It will definitely cover health and safety, and that flammable and obstructions is part of that. So that's bread and butter. I think what we need to do for it will touch on stay put, etc. But we need to have fire strategies, especially for our 22 higher risk buildings and sheltered homes, which will be separate to the tenant handbook. So it's going to be a bit of a mix and match. We will make reference for everybody in the tenant handbook, but there will be separate discussions and dialogue going on with those residents who live in the higher risk buildings. And we've expanded that definition to not only those properties which are 18 metres plus, but our sheltered housing and almshouses, because actually that's where most fires occur. So we broadened our definition as other authorities do. So it's going to be a bit of a mix and match, more specific detail for the higher risk buildings and sheltered, and a more general approach in the tenant handbook.
Okay, thank you. Okay, regulator update. Now they are listening to you, Peter, so be careful what you say.
I think I said something naff like where to deal with it with them listening in last time. So just basically the progress to date is that we provided some more information post them being on site. And I think there is a summary attached to this. They are observing this meeting. They will be observing the resident voice meeting next week, we found out, and we're likely to know the outcome in January, where we get an opportunity to plug any gaps which they've identified, because with an undertaking of this type, it's actually very easy not to provide information which we all know is there but we haven't handed over. So we get another opportunity to do that, and we've set up fortnightly meetings with them just to keep touching base, and the next one of those is this afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, performance dashboard.
Just to say that this dashboard covers the period up until the end of September 25. So because we said that we would come with quarterly reports to this committee, but I do know of a particular interest is the electrical safety testing, which we're getting updated on weekly, and as of Monday it was at 86%.
Okay, thank you. Are people happy with this? And finally, the risk matrix.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick update there. The key risk the matrix for the housing risks. Just to note that we've just we have some new risks to add, which are the RSH inspection regime. We want to do an umbrella fire safety risk that with the to move the fire risk assessments underneath as part of our programme of works for fire safety, and our housing technology, the risk around that and delivery. Does anybody have any questions?
People happy with this? Yeah, thank you.
Can I just add to that, as has just been discussed, we're going to, the major works one is possibly our highest risk because it feeds into lots of different areas of activity. So as the chair said, it's going to court, and we're hoping for the right decision being made at port. But I just wanted to reassure reassure members that Greg and the team are doing work on building up that programme, which involves not just the technical aspects, but the way we engage with residents, the groups that we will put in place as the norm, getting housing management colleagues to work with the major works team, especially if we need to do decanting or any of that sort of activity. And that is, we have, for example, as I think has been reported previously, been talking to Chris Pelham and his team, especially about Golden Lane, because we know that could be quite intensive. So it's not just about the programme, there's work going on to
again,
that as well.
I think all those issues, it would be good to have a report about that in January, Greg and Peter, because I think, as I've said elsewhere, once we've got court over, then that we need to make sure that we're carefully managing all these issues. It's a really good step forward. And then we just need to make sure that we're happy with the detail about how the projects are going to be managed. Helen.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you, Peter, because I think that whilst it's clear that it's going to be some months, quite a while before there's kind of scaffolding going up and bricks and mortar changing, because there's a process to go on in advance of that. However, the consultation and the involvement of residents happens as soon as we are confident about the capital funding for the programmes, because I think that residents are worried, they're not sure quite what it means for them across all of the estates having major works programmes. And I know that other members, and certainly I, do get emails from people who are at the end of a major works programme and have got comments to make that would be very helpful to the next round of major works that we're undertaking. So I think that to have a focus on getting resident engagement established as soon as we know the money is available is absolutely critical to the success of some of this.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Item 14 is questions on matters relating to the work of the subcommittee. Not received any, Chair.
No.
Okay. Item 15, any other business that the chairman considers urgent?
No.
Item 16, which is exclusion of the public.
Have people happy to agree with that? They are.
So I'm sorry, we just need to turn the recording off.
Oh yeah, I can't do it myself. You have to do it.
I hope I can.